Suppose if I want to find the power of a given number, then I can able to use power function. While defining integer constant, I can able to use decimal number or hexadecimal number. Reference data type is further classified into two types, that is predefined data type and user defined data type. Hello to all, a warm welcome to my new session on Introduction to .NET Programming. I'm Revati from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So dear student, before going to start my today's session, let me to recall the topic which I have covered in my last session. So dear student, in my last session, I started with structure of C# program. Along with that, I have discussed C# command line arguments. So these are the two topics I have covered in my last session, and from the examination point of view, both the topics are very important. But in my today's session, I'm going to deal with math functions. Along with that, I'm going to deal with literals in C# programming. Along with that, C# data types and the different symbols used in pointers. So these are the topic I'm going to deal in my today's session. Now let's see what is math function. So dear student, if I consider C, C++, Java, we have some built-in functions to perform mathematical operations. Similarly, if I consider C# programming, here also we are going to have some different mathematical functions. In that, at the beginning, I have maths. What is maths? Suppose in a given list, I want to find out the largest number or maximum number. For that, I have maths method. And where this method is present? In the class called math. So let me to consider the example here. I have 20 and I have 5. Now if I write max of 20, 5, what is the answer I'm going to get? That is 20. So here the math.max of x, y method can be used to find the highest value of x and y. So here I have the highest value 10. Now to find smallest value or minimum value, I'm going to have the method called min, and I'm going to pass two arguments, say x and y. So this is my example. And what is the minimum value I'm going to have here? That is 5. So output here is 5. Now I'm going to have square root function. Suppose if I want to find the square root of any given number, instead of writing the program, I can able to make use of built-in methods. And in C#, I have square root method or I have square root function, and I'm going to pass the argument x. If I consider this example, I have math dot square root of 100. So math dot square root of 100. So what is the answer I'm going to get? That is 10. Now, suppose if I want to use pi, that is perimeter, then I have the function called pi. Instead of using 3.1214, everywhere in my program, I can able to use pi. So here pi popularly written as the symbol P. So it is written as symbol P is the ratio of circumference of the circle to the diameter. So console, I have the method called write line, and I'm going to print the pi value. And where these pi values are present? In my math function. So math.pi. Now I have power function. Suppose if I want to find the power of a given number, then I can able to use power function. So I'm going to use math.power number 1 to the power 2. So 2 into 2, it is 4. This is the way I can able to use power function. So these are the certain mathematical function which is supported by C# programming. Along with this, we have sine function, cos function, absolute function, etc. Now, another topic of the day here is literals in C# programming. So dear student, if I consider literals in C, C++ or Java, same literals we can have in our .NET. So the fixed values are called literals. So what is literal here? Literals are nothing but the constant value. For example, in C program, if I write int a equal to 10, so this is the example for integer literal. And if I consider float pi equal to 3.1214, then this is example for floating point literals. And if I consider literals, I have character literals, string literals, etc. So here the fixed values are called literals. The constant refers to fixed value. So what is fixed value? That is nothing but the constant value. So what is the constant value I have here? That is 10. And this remains same throughout the program. So the constants refers to fixed values that the program may not alter during its execution. That means these constants are not altered during the execution of the program. So constants can be of any of basic data types. That means I can able to create literals and I can able to use any data type to create literals. So here I can able to create integer constant or integer literal, floating point constant or floating point literals, character constant or character literals, and string literals. Now dear student, I'm going to have the integer literal. So an integer literal can be decimal or hexadecimal constant. That means while defining integer constant, I can able to use decimal number or hexadecimal number. So decimal number means what? I can able to use 0 to 9. If I go with hexadecimal, then I have 0 to 9. After that, I have A, B, C, D, E and F. So what is hexa? It is 16. So here 0 to 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 0 to 15, it is total 16. To represent 16 digit, I have hexadecimal constant. A prefix specifies the base and radix. So whatever the prefix I'm going to use, that is going to specify what kind of literals I'm going to use, that is decimal or hexadecimal. So here I have 0 small letter x and I have 0 capital letter hex. So if I'm going to use hexadecimal constant, then I can able to use this one or this one. And there is no prefix is used for decimal. That means if I go with 0 to 9, then I don't have any prefix. So an integer literal can also have suffix for combination of U and L. That means if I consider integer literals, then I can able to use the suffix in order to indicate signed number or long number. So the suffix can be uppercase or lowercase. So while using suffix, I can able to use uppercase U or lowercase u or uppercase L or lowercase l. So here 30U. So 30U means what? Unsigned integer. So dear student, here 30L is nothing but long int, and here 30UL is nothing but 30 unsigned long integer. Now I have floating point literals. To represent floating point or precisions, I'm going to use floating point literals. So a floating point literals has an integral part as well as decimal part. That means if I write 3.1214, here 3 is nothing but my integral part. Along with integral part, I have decimal part, that is dot. Then I have 1214. This is nothing but fractional part. Along with that, I can able to have exponent part. Now, you can represent floating point literals either in decimal form or exponent form. So, this is legal one. So, this is the normal floating point representation. Now, this is the exponent form. Both are same. That means both the way I can able to represent floating point integral. Now, I have character constants. So, dear student, if I want to assign single character, then I can go with character constant. And if I have array of characters, then that is example for string constant. So character literals are enclosed within symbol quote. For example, if I write A within single quote, then this is the example for character constant. And if I write Z, this is the example for character constant. For example, X can stored in a simple variable of character type. There are certain characters in C hash when they are preceded by the backslash. So here if I write backslash n, then this is nothing but the new line operator, and backslash t, this is tab. So they have special meaning. They are used to represent new line as well as tab. Now I have string literals or string constants. So what is string constant? When I have one character, that is example for character constant, and when I have more than two character, then that is known as string literals. For example, if I consider my name Revati, and if I write this one inside the double quote, then it is called string constant or string literals. So here string literals or constants are enclosed in double quote. A string constant. So a string contains characters that are similar to character literals. That means it can able to have plain characters, escape sequences as well as universal characters. So if I write hello dear, this is also example for string literals. Even if I write, that means if I use backslash character, then also it's example for string constants. So these are the different types of literals supported by C# programming. So dear student, now I have C# data type. So what is data type? Why I require data type? So here I require data type to identify particular kind of data or item. For example, if I have 10, then to identify what kind of data it is, I require data type. For example, it is integer. And if I write Revati, then what kind of data it is? String. So here C# data types are mainly classified into three different types, that is value data type, pointer data type, along with that reference data types. Now this value data types are further classified into predefined data types and user-defined data types. Some of the examples for predefined data types are integer, boolean, float, etc. And if I consider user-defined data types, then the example for user data types are enumeration, structure. Now, if I consider reference data types, then reference data type is further classified into two types, that is predefined data type and user-defined data type. So, some of the example for predefined data types are objects and strings, and some of the example for user-defined data types are classes and interface. Anyway, dear student, let's see the type of data types one by one. So at the beginning, I have value data type. So dear student, please remember here that as the topic name itself indicates that it's mainly going to deal with the values. So it's mainly going to deal with the values. So the value data types are integer based. So here remember one thing, that value means what? Integer values. Just remember, value means what? It is integer value as well as floating point. So dear student, if I consider C# programming language, value is nothing but integer and floating point. And here I have signed integer or unsigned integer. Along with that, I have unsigned floating point and signed floating point. Now, this value data types are classified into two types, that is predefined data type and user defined data type. So what is predefined data type? As the name itself indicates that these data types are previously defined or built-in data types, and I'm going to use those data types in my program. So example, integer, boolean, float, etc. The next type of value data type here is user defined data type. So as the type itself indicates that it is user defined data type. That means user can able to define their own data type, and it is called user defined data type. And example, structures, enumeration, etc. So the example for user defined data type is structure and enumeration. And if I consider predefined data type, then example here is integer, boolean, float, etc. Now I have my second type of data type here is reference data type. So what is reference here? That is nothing but the address. That is nothing but the address. So the reference data type do not contain the actual data. So dear student, just remember one thing, that reference is nothing but address. So when it's going to refer something, then it does not include any value, or it's not responsible for storing any data. So the reference data type do not contain actual data stored in a variable. So dear student, to understand this concept, consider pointer. So just remember pointer. So what is pointer? Pointer is a variable which is responsible for holding the address of other variable. That means I can able to store the address of some variable in my pointer variable. So pointer variable does not store any actual data. Similarly, if I go with reference data type, then it does not store any actual data, but they contains a reference. Here reference is nothing but the address. If the data is changed by one of the variable, the other variable automatically reflects. For example, think that I have address. Okay, address of A. And if I make changes in this variable A, then automatically it's going to reflect. That means if the data is changed by one of the variables, then other variable automatically reflects. So here I have address of A and address of B. Okay, now here I have 10, here I have 20. Now this 20 is going to reflect in my A, because if I make modification in any one of the reference variable, then it's going to reflect to other variable. So there are two types of reference data types, that is predefined type and user-defined type. Predefined means what? It is built-in reference data type, example, objects and strings. Now, if I go with user-defined data types, then user can able to create their own reference data types, example, classes and interface. Anyway, dear student, we are going to study predefined reference data type and user reference data types in depth in my upcoming session. At present, you just remember the type of reference data type, that is predefined type, example, object and string, user defined type, classes and objects. Now, the next type here is pointer data type. So, what is pointer? If I consider C program, we have the concept called pointer. So, pointer is a variable which is responsible for holding the address of another variable. So, here the pointer in C# language is a variable and it's also known as locator. So, the another name of pointer here is locator, or even I can able to use indicator that points to an address of a value. So, here I have the value 10. Now, this value is stored at the memory location 1000. Now, this memory location address is stored in my pointer. So, for this reason, pointer is called variable and it holds the address of another variable. For example, here I have the variable called A, here I have the variable called P. So, A value is 10 and this 10 is stored at the location 1000. Now, this pointer P holds the address of A. So, what's the address of A? That is 1000. So, P equal to 1000. Now, the symbols used by the pointer. So, here we have ampersand and asterisk. Okay, so symbols used in pointer. So, I have the symbol address, that is ampersand, and star symbol, that is nothing but asterisk. So, what is the name given to the ampersand? That is address operator. Then what's the name given to the star? That is indirect operator. Now, I have the description. Suppose if I want to determine the address of a variable. So, if I want to know the address of the variable, then I'm going to use the symbol ampersand. So, here I'm going to use the symbol ampersand of A. Ampersand A. Now, if I want to access the value which is stored at that address, then I'm going to use the symbol asterisk. So, here if I use ampersand of P, then what is my answer? That is 1000. Okay. Now, if I use star P, then the value 10. So, what's the value? That is 10. So, if I use ampersand P, then it is 1000. If I use star P, then it is 10. So, ampersand used to determine the address of a variable, whereas asterisk symbol is used to access the value of an address. That means in that particular address, what value is present. To access that, I'm going to use asterisk symbol. So these are the certain topic we discussed in my today's session. So dear student, I started with mathematical functions. Along with that, I have discussed literals. Along with that, I have discussed the different data types supported by C# programming. Anyway, dear student, in my next session, I'm going to deal with C# variables. Along with that, I'm going to deal with rules for defining variables. Along with that, I'm going to deal with scope of variables in C# programming, and I'm going to deal with boxing and unboxing. So these are the 4 topics I'm going to deal in my next session. Anyway, dear student, let's meet in the next session with more information about introduction to .NET programming. Until that, keep watching and keep learning. Thank you.